You're listening to the Lifestyle Business Show with Lucy Gordon, the podcast of building a more profitable business that gives you the lifestyle and freedom you desire. I share strategies to streamline your business, increase your income, and reclaim your time so that you can spend more time doing what you love. Hello, and welcome to the Lifestyle Business Show with me, Lucy Gordon. This week I wanted to share a little bit about what I've been up to in my business so that you can sort of see what it's like being a business owner, and particularly focusing on the lifestyle aspect of running a business. So this week has actually been a really busy one for me. I'm recording this on a Friday. I'm going on holiday next week, which I'm super excited about. So I'm recording this the week before as a sort of last job to do before I go on holiday. This week I have been at Atomicon, so I went up there on Monday. I actually had to leave on Monday morning because Newcastle is very far away from where I live. So I left on Monday morning. I went to a fringe event in the afternoon and then had dinner with some of my business friends while we were up there. I had the Atomicon conference all day on Tuesday and then I came back on Wednesday. So what that meant was that almost basically 3 days of my diary were taken out. So the week before I did have to work a lot more hours than I would usually work in a week to make up for the fact that I was going to be out of the office and away from my desk for 3 days. One of the things that I want to get across when it comes to having a lifestyle business is that having a lifestyle business doesn't mean you're not working. It doesn't mean you're spending all of your time sitting on a beach. At least for me, it doesn't. I enjoy work. I get a lot of enjoyment out of doing work, particularly now that I've started this business. I didn't get that much enjoyment out of my previous work, as you all know, but now I do get enjoyment from that because now I can see the impact that I'm having on people, and similarly with this new business I can see the impact and I can feel the excitement around when I do things and put things together and I'm making progress, and I really, really love that. So the fact that I had to work a bit harder than usual last week wasn't really an issue, as I said, because I wanted to get ahead because I was going to be out of the office for 3 days. In terms of actually going to Atomicon, when I signed up to it, so I signed up to it about almost 12 months ago, I knew at that point that I was very unhappy in my other business, in my real estate business. So signing up to Atomicon was sort of a little bit of a beacon in the darkness, sort of out in the future ahead of me that I could look forward to as something that I could aspire to. Because if you know about Atomicon, you'll know it's super fun, buzzy, lots of lovely bright colours and jokes and all sorts of things in all of their marketing, and that's where I aspired to be having fun in my business, to really enjoy running my business. So I booked it as like that inspirational thing, like if I'm not there beforehand, by the time I get to Atomicon, the things I want to take away from it are how I can change my business to make it more enjoyable. Luckily, I already figured out how to do that in the last 12 months. So when I actually came round to Atomicon, my motivations for going and my sort of goals for going were different. So the thing with going to conferences, it's important to know what you want to get out of it. As I said, my motivations changed in terms of what I wanted to get out of it, but I set new targets, and my targets were obviously to learn some key marketing tips that I could bring back in my business, but also to meet new people. Having worked in the same industry for 12 years, my network is very heavily real estate focused, obviously. I do know lots of business owners, but the majority of people in my network, and if you were to go on my LinkedIn profile, you'd see a majority of them are real estate people, or at least they were. So my goal with Atomicon was to meet lots of other business owners who could inspire me, potentially become clients, potentially become friends, whatever it is. That was my goal. So rather than going to every single talk there, I decided that I would go to a couple of the talks, but then also spend some of the sessions just in the breakouts areas, just chatting to other people. So that was my goal with it. Now, as an introvert, this is a challenging thing for me. I'm sure lots of you will be listening thinking, she's not an introvert. Well, trust me, I am. I didn't realise that it was what it was actually until my dear friend Sarah, who was on the podcast last week, basically pointed it out to me. And that is how we met, was that she was helping coach people who were exactly like me, who were introverts. And so now that I know that I'm an introvert, I know how to plan for it. So for me, I find big crowds very intimidating. I find sparking up conversations with new people very difficult, and I find talking and meeting new people, etc., very, very draining. So knowing that I was going to have to be on for all of Tuesday, I made sure that I had blocked some time out of my diary for Wednesday afternoon, so that once I got back, I could then just chill out, lie on the sofa, and just sort of recoup a little bit after that. The other thing also with that is that I always make sure when I go to those kind of events, I don't stay in the most buzzing hotel and location. I try and stay somewhere where I know I'll have a nice quiet space and a nice clean quiet space where I can be by myself. So I booked a hotel that was about 10 minutes from the venue, and I actually booked it with Sarah, so we got lots of quality time together, which was great. And yeah, on to the conference itself. So I went to a couple of the talks, which were really, really great. And actually some of them, I've realised that some of my flaws when it comes to being a business owner, that I can now start to adjust, which is really, really helpful. And I also learnt some great tips as to how I can improve the way that I do things and the way that I market going forward. So I'm really excited to start implementing them. And actually I've already got quite a few of them scheduled in and did quite a lot of work yesterday when I was back, in preparation for when I'm back from holiday, which is really exciting. At the conference itself, I met loads of really, really nice people, so that was really lovely. So being an introvert, trying to go up to people was extremely intimidating. So I generally my tactic was not to go up to people just wandering around the room, but to find myself somewhere like the coffee station. So standing at the coffee station, someone else comes up the coffee station, spark up a bit of conversation. Because it's very intimidating when you go into a room full of people who are all chit-chatting to each other. You feel like they all know each other and it's all very scary. The chances are probably they don't all know each other, they're all just networking. But it's really hard to infiltrate that conversation. So talking to someone while you're in a queue for something, like the coffee station, is really, really helpful. So actually I found that the longest conversations I had with people, so during these sessions when I wasn't actually going to the sessions, were in the queue for the coffee station and in the queue for the margarita station, because there was one of those there. And I had just the most wonderful conversations, met some really, really interesting people from all different sectors, doing all sorts of different things. And it was really nice to walk away knowing that I have formed now those sort of deeper connections with people that I didn't know before, because you've actually had a chance to have proper conversations with them. The other thing that I found a little bit challenging actually being there was because my business is so new, I did feel that way. I've been a business owner for 6.5 years, and so I know what I'm doing when it comes to running a business. But then when I was meeting these people talking about my new business, I was like, well, because it's still early days, like I don't have some of the things that they have in terms of the years of experience and the huge email lists and the reams and reams of clients, because I've only been doing this for 6 months. So it's still early days, and I found that quite challenging, I suppose, in a way, because I was sort of talking to people and feeling like a real newbie, because even though I've been running a business just as long or longer than a lot of them, it's just that my new business, my new focus is so new compared to all of them. So that was a bit of a challenge, I found. Because, obviously it feels like I'm starting again in some ways. And so it felt a bit challenging to be surrounded by these other people who felt like they were so much more advanced in their business. But that's just a question of time. So if you're still new in your business, don't worry. These things, it takes time to get that experience. It takes time for things to grow and scale. So don't worry at all if you're on the same page as I am. So there were 2 really interesting talks that I went to that were probably my favourite. One of them was by someone called Richard Moore, who is a LinkedIn sort of DM sales expert. And what he's saying was so simple and so practical, and it just felt really ridiculous that I hadn't been already doing that on my own. So that was a really, really helpful talk in terms of how to expand those conversations in the DMs and take them through to sales calls, etc. And the other one that was really, really interesting for me as well was by Teresa Harthwaring, I think is her name, and she's a webinar expert. And I've hosted a few webinars in the past for my real estate business, and again, all the things she said, I was like, oh, the things you're saying are so obvious, but are the things that I have absolutely skipped over and rushed over because I feel awkward doing them. So for both of these, I've got practical takeaways that I can do in terms of improving my conversations that I'm having and improving my sales techniques going forward, which is really, really helpful just from those 2 sessions. So I really, really loved it. 2 great sessions, lots of great conversations. There were lots of other things that were completely mad there, and I've already booked my ticket for next year. So if you're going next year, let me know, and I will see you in the new venue of Manchester, which will be a lot easier to get to. So some other stuff that happened this week was that yesterday I spoke at an online event that was hosted in America, which was my first time talking about that particular subject. Gosh, I was so nervous. It was terrible. I got onto the call and I was like, right, getting ready to go. And rather disappointingly, there weren't actually that many attendees. So, well, the benefit of that is that not many people saw my talk. And so the fact that I didn't go quite as planned is absolutely fine. But I think that slightly threw me off because I was expecting there to be more people on there. And then I was supposed to be doing a 25-minute talk, but in my mind, I just thought I was supposed to finish at 25 minutes past the hour. So I rushed through my entire talk and did the whole thing in 15 minutes, which meant there was then a very awkward gap that we had to try and fill. So, that was rather excruciating. But what has come from that is, experience. As I said, that was the first time I've talked about that subject. So now I've done it once, hopefully it will get easier. And it's the first time I've screwed up a timing like that and had to awkwardly normally if I do trainings and webinars, and it sort of doesn't really matter what time you finish because you're the only speaker. And so if you finish early, then people get a bit of their time back. If you take a bit longer, then it's absolutely fine. Whereas this was supposed to be quite regimented because there were lots of speakers after me as well. But having done that mistake once, I hopefully won't make it again, which is good. And yeah, it's really made me think about the sort of things that I want to talk about going forward and the events I want to talk about. So lots of learnings from it. And I think that's something that I want to make sure that everyone who's listening takes away from this and all of their experiences. And actually this is one of the things with Atomicon as well. And one of the sessions they were talking about this is that it's not all going to be perfect straight away. You have to iterate, you have to practice, you have to try things until it sticks. So don't worry if things don't go to plan, because it's all a learning experience. So that was quite interesting. In terms of other things, I've got a couple of really great guests lined up for the podcast that I'll be recording sessions with when I get back from holiday. So I'm really excited to share those with you. I've also been asked to talk at another event, which is in September. So that's really exciting. And that's the thing, is if I wasn't putting myself out there to do these events and starting a podcast and talking about all of this stuff in more detail, then I wouldn't have these opportunities. So one of the things that I actually said yesterday, which I think is really interesting, and I hadn't really thought about it until we were having this conversation because we had so much spare time after I finished my talk too quickly, was the difference between how I feel between, from now versus this time last year. And last year I felt so tired and burnt out, and I was constantly worrying, and I felt like I had to be always at my desk, and I was feeling stressed, and I was working with very difficult clients, and I felt like I was sort of attracting really difficult clients. Right now this year I feel really light, and actually a lot of my friends say to me, like, they can't believe how relaxed and light I seem, and like how I just sound so much happier, which is fantastic. And I do genuinely feel so much happier because I've made these changes. And I think a year ago, if I'd screwed up a talk to some American big shots, I would have ruminated on days and been so annoyed and angry with myself. Now I'm like, no, that was a learning experience. Things go wrong. It was fine. Not the worst thing in the world. Move on. And I think that has also led me to attract much nicer clients. I'm attracting people who are lovely, lovely people who genuinely want to change their lives and their businesses, and I'm so excited about that. And that brings me so much joy and brings me part of this lightness and this purpose and this happiness versus a year ago. So if you are feeling stuck with clients and you feel like lots of bad things and negative things are happening to you, then I don't mean to sound all woo-woo, but that could be because of where you are and you're putting out this energy. And when I say putting out this energy, like obviously there is the woo-woo universe energy version, but there's also it's stuff that comes across in the way that you speak and in the way that you write, in the way that you talk to people, and the way that you sit and stand that other people feel. And it's that energy that leads you to attract potentially very difficult and demanding clients. Whereas when you give off lightness and happiness, then you attract, hopefully, lighter and happier clients. So that, I think, is a really interesting change in perspective from where I was a year ago. In terms of some other things that have just been going on in business at the moment, so I'm running both of my businesses. With EIP, because I was feeling so sort of negative towards it for such a long time, I was almost doing the bare minimum to keep it running and keep my students in the academy looked after, etc. And so I was doing a open-close method of membership, so that my academy is a subscription-based membership, so people can join just for as long as they want. And I was doing it with an open and closed rather than all the time open, because I didn't want to have to deal with the admin constantly of having any tech issues with people joining or anything like that. So I was opening the doors for a week and then I was closing them for 3 weeks. And I've decided recently to reopen them fully, because that was one of my original USPs when I first started it, was that people could join whenever they want. They didn't have to wait for a specific date to be able to go to an in-person training. They could join whenever they wanted. And by shifting it to an open close, obviously I got rid of that. So I've now made it open all of the time. And what I've decided to do is put in more resources. So I've closed down the template library that I'd created. So I created a library where I had all of my pre-made models in there that people could purchase. And I've decided to now make that a free resource within the academy. So I've set all that up and that's all going live on the 1st of July. So with the template library and a couple of other additions, and with thinking about the true value that's actually in there and what the competitors in the market charge, I've actually decided to increase the price by nearly 50%, starting from the 1st of July. And that's been one of those things where I go back and forth between, am I going to jump up the price up too much and alienate people, or do I need to go up more because actually the value of it is quite a lot? And we all struggle with pricing quite a lot, and I will do an episode just purely on pricing, I think, at some point. But talking it through with other people is, one, really, really helpful, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, but also reminding myself that I'm not running a charity, I'm running a business, and the value of my product, of the EIP Academy, is massive, and I shouldn't undersell that. It's worth way more than what I'm charging. It's hundreds of hours of CPD that helps people get jobs, move up in their careers, make big investment decisions. Like those template models that I've added in, people were using for £30 million investments where they were going to make huge amounts of money. So it's absolutely justified for me to increase the price there. So, sorry, going off on a bit of a segue about my other business, but wanting to sort of share the fact that I'm, one, getting passionate about that business again, but also that I'm not underselling and underplaying, and I'm going back to my roots of the USPs that I really wanted to bring across in that business. So yeah, that's fun and exciting. And then in the business coaching business, which is what you're listening to this podcast for, I have got some really exciting things in the pipeline. I've just created my focus tracker, which you can now buy as a one-off. That's something to help you run your business for forever. It's just one-off purchase, and then you get 52 weeks of tracking capability that you can then just reuse every single year. So I'm really excited about that. You can get that at lucygordon.com/focus if that's something you're interested in. And I'm putting together another little secret offer, which I will share details of in due course. In the meantime, it's time for me to go on holiday, and I will see you on my return. Thank you for listening to the Lifestyle Business Show with Lucy Gordon.
If you're ready to spend less time in your business, head to lucygordon.com/time to download your free guide.